Hello, my lovely anatomists and physiologists. We are still working on the conducting portion of the respiratory tract. We started last time really talking in detail about the respiratory epithelium, which we said was lining the tract with the exception of the pharynx, which is shared with the GI tract. We talked about the nose being important in both olfaction, warming the air, humidifying the air, and then we talked about the pharynx as being the back of the throat. So this is joined up with the respiratory tract and the mouth. Moving next to the larynx, we see that this is what we can call the top of the trachea. We're going to see that this will help to regulate the volume of air that's going to enter or exit the lungs. And we'll also see our vocal cords are located here. So this is what people will think of as the voice box. So when we talk about respiratory tract important in production of sound, it's this particular structure. We'll take a look at our models in just a few minutes to label the larynx. We'll see that the larynx opens up into the trachea then. So the trachea we think of as the airway, the main airway. Let me call it that, main airway. It's going to have C-shaped cartilage that's going to hold the airway open. A C-shaped cartilage is holding the airway open. The trachea then divides into the left and right main bronchi. And so these are the airways that enter the lung. And they enter the left and the right lung respectively. And so I'm going to highlight here with a blue color that we have actually entered the lung at this point. And so let me go ahead and highlight the remaining portions of the conducting portion to show that these are all inside of the lung. So the rest of our structures, the lobar bronchi, segmental bronchi, and the bronchioles are all classified as inside of the lung. When we talk about the left and the right main bronchi, we're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So we no longer get those C-shaped cartilages, but we get cartilage plates. So the left and right main bronchi are held open by that cartilage. And then we see the lobar bronchi and the segmental bronchi are branching smaller and smaller tubes. So I'm just going to kind of label them like that, smaller and smaller branches. And we'll look at a picture. And you're studying these as part of your lab work. And then when we talk about, we can also talk about this as the bronchial tree. So let me label it that way as well, bronchial tree. And when we get to the bronchiole, we're going to see these are quite a bit smaller. So these are about 1 millimeter in diameter. This is where you can have your smooth muscle allowing for bronchoconstriction or bronchodilation. Remember, at the beginning of the semester, we said that the parasympathetic division is going to constrict those bronchi, really meaning like returning them back to their resting state, whereas the sympathetic division is going to trigger bronchodilation, where you're increasing your airway because you need more movement of air. The bronchiole then has no cartilage. And it does have this smooth muscle, which is what's allowing for constriction and dilation. Let's take a look at our models. So here we're back to that model where we're getting the sagittal cut of the nasal cavity, the mouth, the esophagus, which is part of the digestive system. That's the tube that's carrying food down into the stomach. And then we're getting the air tube, which is the trachea. And the top of that is the larynx. When we look at the opening in the larynx, the actual opening, we call that the glottis. So the glottis is the actual opening that's allowing the air to enter into the larynx and the trachea. And when we swallow food, we don't want food or water going into the airway, going into the respiratory tract. And so we have this flap of tissue called the epiglottis, which is going to close over that opening, preventing the movement of food, water into that respiratory tract. So we can label the epiglottis as that flap of tissue that's going to, I'm going to say, protect airway when swallowing. And then we have the glottis, which is the actual opening to the larynx. The larynx, remember, is the top of the trachea. It's also what we think of as our voice box, meaning that's where the vocal cords are located. And the trachea then I think is fine to call our main airway. As we take a look at this next model, we see at the very top our larynx. We see next the trachea, which is the large tube. You can see the cartilage there, the C-shaped cartilage. We see that the C-shaped cartilage continues onto our right main bronchi and our left main bronchi. And then we can see as those bronchi enter the lungs, that we're getting smaller tubes and we're getting more cartilaginous plates. And so the next division is what's called the lobar, because you're going into the different lobes of the lung. So the next division is called lobar bronchi. And then on this model, you have even smaller little branches. They're all color coordinated. And those super small branches that are shown here are the segmental bronchi. And bronchi would be plural, bronchus would be singular. And that's as far as this particular model shows. It's as far as this particular model shows. The other thing that we can point out is, get kind of a brighter color here. Use green. In this area, make that bigger. In this area, where the trachea comes down and then branches into the left and right main bronchi, we call this particular area the carina. And the carina is where you have special nerves to trigger a cough if food has made it to this point. So if the epiglottis was not effective at closing off the glottis and preventing food and water from traveling through the larynx, through the trachea, it's going to hit the carina. It hasn't entered the lung yet. And when we hit the carina, then that's going to trigger that coughing, coughing, coughing that would, you know, hopefully propel that material out of the trachea back into the esophagus where you can swallow it. So that feeling of, oh, it's down the wrong tube and you're coughing is coming from that particular area. This particular model does not show the bronchiole, which would be that next structure, which is going to be a lot smaller. The bronchiole is kind of our ending for the conducting portion. So we will stop here, picking up next with our respiratory portion or zone. As always, take care of yourselves and each other.